Starting off at number 10 now, we have Alex Chiu. He is a 46-year-old man who claims to be immortal. How has he achieved that? Through the use of his immortality rings. He invented these small magnetic rings to be worn on people's fingers and toes to ensure that people's cells always heal properly and never die. Apparently, if the cells constantly regenerate, then the person never dies. He says he has modernized ancient Chinese medicine to make immortality accessible for everyone. You can actually buy these rings on Amazon right now, although I don't recommend it. They come in either black or white, although the black one costs more because it's stronger, apparently. Listen, I don't know how it all works. I'm just a mere mortal. Next up at number 9, we have Leonard Jones. He was an American politician born in 1797 who claimed to be immortal. More interestingly though, he claimed that anyone else could be immortal, you just needed the right amount of fasting and praying. He found a preacher that believed the same as him, and together they founded the Live Forever faith and tried to recruit people to found a city of immortals. While they were recruiting, the preacher died. Apparently, Leonard Jones was very much embarrassed when he had to speak at the funeral of his immortal partner. He then switched to politics and tried to run for US president many times, with his main policy being, his immortality. Sadly, he lost a lot of support when he died, age 71, and people say you can't trust politicians. Alright, at number 8 now, we have the Wandering Jewish Man. In medieval Europe, there was a story of a Jewish man who was there at the crucifixion of Jesus. As he saw Jesus carrying the cross, the man taunted him and told him to hurry up. Jesus then turned to look at him and cursed him to walk the earth until he returned in the second coming. His name was Ahasuerus, and countless people said they saw him wandering the earth hundreds of years later. Sometimes he was old, sometimes young, or even changed between the two. Others say it's simply a story of symbolism for the Jewish diaspora that have moved across the earth over the past millennia. What do you guys think? Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Immortal Monk. In 1927, the leader of a group of Russian Buddhist monks gathered his followers to announce his own death. His name was Dashi Dorzo Itigelov. He predicted that Stalin, Russia's leader, would persecute them, and he warned them to flee. Then he said he would return in 75 years, and in a deep meditation he passed away. Then many years later, his body was exhumed. The monks were amazed to find his body perfectly preserved. His limbs were flexible and the skin was elastic. In 2002, his body was put on display in the temple. It was 75 years on, and he had apparently returned. The Buddhists believe that he remains in a deep meditative state on the edge of life and death. Next up at number 6 now, we have Nicholas Flamel. You might recognize this guy's name from Harry Potter as the immortal wizard who created the Philosopher's Stone and was a good friend of Dumbledore's. Well, that fiction is based on the real Nicholas Flamel. He was a French scribe born in 1340, and records show that he died in 1418. However, hundreds of years later, in the 1700s, stories started to emerge that he was still alive. People said he was an alchemist who had discovered the real Philosopher's Stone and achieved immortality. There are people who believe Flamel faked his own death and went into hiding to protect this powerful artifact from getting into the wrong hands, and that he's still out there today. Coming at number 5 now, we have Merlin. Merlin was said to be the legendary wizard figure at the court of King Arthur. King Arthur himself is a figure that is steeped in both history and legend. It's often difficult to untwine the two. Merlin was said to be half human, half demon. His demonic side was where he inherited his incredible powers and abilities, but his human side put them to work for good. One of these inherited powers was immortality. Believers in his existence say that you can find sightings of Merlin throughout British history, many hundreds of years after his time with King Arthur. Others say this is just retellings of the same story. The only way to find the truth is to keep picking apart the fact from the fiction. At the number 4 spot now, we have the 3 Nephites. According to Mormons, Jesus visited what is now America after his resurrection. He chose 12 apostles, and when his time came to leave, 3 of them asked to stay behind forever to help humanity and watch over them. Jesus was said to have granted this, and Mormons believe the 3 Nephites still walk among us today. As proof of this, they point to stories of kind strangers helping people throughout history before disappearing without a trace. Next up at number 3 now, we have Achilles. I'm sure you've all heard of the phrase Achilles' heel. This is the guy it comes from. He was said to be a legendary Greek hero of the Trojan War. The story goes that when he was a baby, he was dipped into the river Styx, the river that separates Earth from the underworld. This made him invulnerable to everything, even death itself, effectively making him immortal, except for one tiny thing. They held him in the river by his ankle, meaning that his ankle was totally vulnerable. He was killed by a poison arrow to that ankle in a battle, thus bringing his immortality to a swift end. Achilles' heel really was his Achilles' heel. Next up at number 2 now, we have the Count of Saint Germain. He was a European nobleman who was born in 1691 and was known for his works in science, the arts, and philosophy. He was said to have attained immortality after drinking an elixir which he made through his mastery of alchemy. He travelled European courts where nobles were astonished to see he had not aged a single day in the 50 years since they last saw him. Many people said that he could live forever, even himself having confessed on at least one occasion to be 300 years old using the secrets of universal medicine. Records show he died in 1784 at the age of 93, but there have been countless stories of his appearance since then, even as recently as the 1970s. Alright, finally at number 1 now we have Qin Shi Huang. He was a famous Chinese emperor whose dynasty lasted 400 years. Some of the most famous works under his rule include the Terracotta Army and parts of the Great Wall of China. He was said to be so loved by his people that they thought of him as an immortal. This was a prophecy Qin Shi was more than happy to fulfill, and he became obsessed with seeking immortality. On 2 occasions, he sent hundreds of people out into the world to find the legendary elixir of life. Both times were a failure. In the end, he died of mercury poisoning after he ate too many mercury pills given to him by his doctors to try and make him mortal. Oh dear.
Let's start us off number 10 with Rosalie Lombardo. I wanted to talk about her first because of how well her body was preserved. I mean, just take a look at this picture right here. Honestly, it looks like a little girl sleeping. How long would you guess she's been dead for? Well, if you guess 92 years, you guys would be right. This was just so incredible. She has been embalmed so well. Special embalming techniques were used. All of her organs are remarkably intact. Maybe she can come back to life one day when technology is there. Well, this little girl is just 1 year old. Okay, it's time to up the age by hundreds of years. At number 9, we have La Doncella, Inca Maiden. La Doncella is currently on display so people can see her in Argentina's Museum of High Altitude Archaeology in Salta, which is a city in Argentina. I think this would be so amazing to see one day. La Doncella has been mummified over 500 years ago, and today she still looks like she can open up her eyes and you can just I don't know, just come to life. This particular little girl was the best preserved for the 1500s, and she was actually sacrificed in an Inca religion ritual. Her body froze in the cold on top of a mountain, and it wasn't until more recently when her body was found and then professionally preserved. So scientists can really study the body to find out more about the history and find out who this little girl was. An Inuit baby is up next on this list on number 8. This baby takes us back 537 years ago. This particular Inuit baby was part of a group of 8 mummies found in 1972 grave site in Greenland. The graves dated back to 1475 AD. There were 6 women and 2 children found. This was one of the 2 children that was found and preserved. The woman found at the gravesite had a malignant tumor near the base of her skull, which most likely caused her to die. The Inuit baby is said to be a boy aged about 6 months, and it appeared to have been buried alive with her. Number 7, we have Zinzu. Zin was also known as a Lady Day. Zin gained fame more than 2,000 years after her death because her tomb was just discovered back in 1971. Her body was exceptionally preserved. Along with her body, there was hundreds of valuable artifacts and documents. Her body is now under the care of Hunan Provincial Museum. They are making sure to keep her body perfectly preserved so it can be around forever. Her body does go on display ever so often. Zin was born back in 213 BC, which is so crazy because we get to witness something older than 2,000 years. And it's a human we get to see. A human that's over 2,000 years old. Now at number 6, we have a mummy who is 2,200 years old. This right here is the Grabal man, who was discovered back in 1952, perfectly naturally preserved. The man dated back to the late 3rd century BC during the early Chromatic Iron Age. There was wounds found on this man that suggested that he was killed by having his throat slashed. He was most likely sacrificed. His corpse was then put into a bag and was buried. Well, this bag fused to his body, not allowing the body to decompose. Instead, it was naturally preserved. Number 5, we have a 2,300-year-old mummy. This right here is the Tolan man. He was a naturally mummified corpse that dates back to the 4th century BC during the time of the pre-Roman Iron Age. He was discovered back in 1950s in Denmark. His body was actually so well preserved that when he was found in the 50s, he was actually mistaken for a murder that just recently happened. The Tolan man was also likely sacrificed. A lot of people back in the day sacrificed themselves for a greater good. It was a greater good for their people. There were so many different beliefs back then. We think it's pretty crazy now. Some thought that they do it to please their gods and spirits. Some other reasons were for cannibalism. There just wasn't enough food, so you have to sacrifice your body so the rest can eat. Alright, number 4, we have Ur David. That dates back over 3,000 years ago. Ur David was a part of a group of mummies that was discovered back at the start of the 20th century in China. The cemetery contained 23 mummies, and Ur David was one of the, best preserved ones. Also, his son was discovered right next to him. He had a 1-year-old baby with brown hair. The baby had a blue felt cap on. The clothes found of these mummies helped scientists and researchers find, how they lived back then. How did they live 3,000 years ago? Number 3, we have another mummy that dates back 3,000 years ago. And actually, this is a female Torturan mummy that lived around 1000 BC. You can really see what this woman looked like. Her hair still hasn't fallen off. This woman is in her 40s and she still has braids in her hair. If you can look closely, but not too close enough because it's actually a bit freaky, you can see the woman's eyelashes. Her eyelashes are still there. It's just so amazing how this woman was naturally preserved. King Tut makes its way onto this list. Number 2, this is a mummy who's about 3,335 years old. It's so crazy how experts can pinpoint an age of human dating back thousands of years ago. This is a more familiar mummy that we all know because this was an Egyptian pharaoh that dates back to the 18th dynasty. This was well known as a new kingdom or sometimes a new empire period of time. This body was discovered back in 1922 by Howard Carter, and now it rests in the Egyptian Museum for people to see. There were some artifacts in the tomb as well, and those were put on display. Again, I would love to see this in real life. Finally, at number 1, we have the mummy that is 5,300 years old. This right here is the famous Otzi, the Iceman. This is a well-preserved mummy of a man that dates back 3,300 BCE time. This mummy was found back in 1991 in the Ötztal Alps, hence the name. He is also Europe's oldest known natural mummy, and he offered an unprecedented amount of information on how people lived back in the day. His body right now is in Italy. I wish I knew that before I went to Italy because I would have loved to see his body. The man is believed to be about 45 years old, which is quite old for the time period. This corpse has been extremely examined, measured, and x-rayed to try to get as much information as we can on.
Coming in at number 10, we have ginger. Have you ever had a ginger shot? They certainly make me feel immortal if nothing else. Officially, ginger can treat nausea, help digestion, reduce muscle pain, treat osteoarthritis, lower blood sugar, lower cholesterol levels, fight heart disease, reduce menstrual cramps, and it can help fight infections. On top of that, current studies link ginger to an improvement in brain functions. There is also an antioxidant that can help protect from Alzheimer's. It is thought that ginger has some anti-cancer properties and may be great at helping prevent pancreatic, breast, ovarian, and colon cancer. Ginger for the absolute win, it sounds like. Coming in at number 9, we have cinnamon. So really, the cinnamon challenge will make you immortal. I mean, I guess not quite, you'll probably throw up. But in moderation, cinnamon is great. Cinnamon regulates your blood sugar, reducing risks of heart disease. In fact, 1 gram of cinnamon a day can reduce bad cholesterol. If you want help metabolizing sugar, cinnamon is your boy. Coming in at number 8, we have guava. Guava is an absolute babe. Not only does guava pack a serious potassium punch, it also has the highest concentration of lycopene of any food. Potassium is incredible for muscle building, and lycopene fights risks of prostate cancer. So basically, guava is good and also really fun to say. Coming in at number 7, we have walnuts. I blooming love a walnut, and there is a happy irony here. Not only do walnuts look like teeny tiny brains, they also help your brain. Nuts in general are fantastic for the brain. Walnuts are fantastic when it comes to fighting Alzheimer's, and they're good for memory in general. They've been linked to alleviating stress, tension, and depression. Coming into number 6, we have kale. Forget spinach, modern day Popeye would be smashing down the kale. How very millennial of him. Not only is it high in iron, which helps blood flow, cell growth, and promotes good liver function, it is also high in vitamins. Vitamin K is especially prevalent in kale, which is pretty apt. Vitamin K is great for bone health and blood cells. It's also good for people with Alzheimer's. Kale is a natural anti-inflammatory, which means it's great for people people suffering with asthma and things like arthritis. Kale is also king when it comes to helping your immune system as well as keeping your liver healthy. Also, there's no end to its goodness, it's also filled with calcium, so hurrah for kale. Coming in at number 5, we have cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper has been used for its medicinal purposes for around 9,000 years. It lowers high cholesterol, relieves pain, stops diarrhea, helps digestion, improves circulation, and really helps osteoarthritis. It also has loads of vitamin C, B6, vitamin E, manganese, and flavonoids. Flavonoids, what a name. Coming in at number 4, we have cabbage. A Men's Health magazine article described cabbage as packing more cancer fighters than an oncologist convention, and I found that so funny that I thought I'd put it in this list. Good on you. Cabbage contains sulforaphane, a chemical that encourages production of a super cancer fighting enzyme. Coming into number 3, we have garlic. Garlic is blooming great for you. There's a reason why vampires hate it. Basically, they're all dead and jealous of how immortal it can make the rest of us. Not immortal and I have to drink blood way, just immortal and are like, yay for garlic, I'm living my life way. Garlic is packed with vitamin B6, vitamin C, manganese, and a good amount of calcium. Garlic is also really good for things like toothache and sore throats. Garlic boosts the immune system and can prevent you getting a cold. It can also reduce blood pressure and lower cholesterol. Legitimately, garlic can help you live longer. Coming into number 2, we have ginseng. Ginseng has been used medicinally by the Chinese for literally thousands of years. Why? Well, because it's a root of glory that will pretty much help you live forever. Ginseng boosts energy, lowers blood sugar, lowers cholesterol, lowers stress, and also, wait for it lads, it helps with sexual dysfunction. Ginseng. Also, if that wasn't enough good news for you, there are also studies to suggest that it increases your libido. I guess, like, ginseng for the absolute win. Ginseng is regularly used as a restorative health tonic for elderly people, and it's also great for the heart and lowers your blood pressure. Ginseng, ginseng, you are peng. Okay, it's all in the name at number 1. Watch me try and pronounce it. We have jiaogulan. 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 You might not have heard of this superfood, but the name literally means immortality herb, so, you know. Apparently it helps the liver burn fat, it fights bad cholesterol, and regulates blood pressure. So basically, it's a godsend for preventing heart attacks. It's also apparently good for the immune system and good at regulating hormones. Jiaogulan is drank by a lot of Chinese people in tea, and elderly people often thank the herb for their good health. So there you go. Immortality is yours with just a few simple ingredients. Are you guys into healthy eating? What is your favorite food on this list? Let me know in the comments section down below. I for one love ginger, not because I am one, just because it makes me feel great. Yum. Also, did anyone notice how a lot of these immortality provoking things start with a G or a C?